This is Construction Safety Perspective, presented by Mass Construction. My name is Bob Kunz, I'm the host. And today I'll be speaking with Bill Aalerud from Columbia Construction Company regarding psychological safety. Bill is the Executive Vice President at Columbia Construction for the past 12 years. He's been working there. He's responsible for strategic planning, business development, training, human resources, and lean practices, among other things. Bill's also the AGC Mass Chair of the Board of Directors and has graduated from UMass Lowell with a BS in Civil and Structural Engineering and also an MBA from Babson. Today, Bill and I will be speaking about psychological safety. Bill and I have been talking about this subject over the course of the last couple of years, sharing texts and emails and even some LinkedIn shares, and I'm particularly interested in some of the effort that Bill and Columbia are advancing internally within their organization. I thought it's important just to sort of frame what my perception of psychological safety is, and I'll borrow just a brief definition from Professor Amy Edmondson, who is a professor at the Harvard Business School. She did some research, groundbreaking research, as it turns out, in 1999 in the healthcare industry. And Amy, Professor Edmondson, frames psychological safety as a climate in which people feel free to express relevant thoughts and feelings. Now, I'm going to add work-related. I'm going to place it in the context of work. And I think we've all experienced like those micro moments when we're having a discussion with someone, and listen, let's call it your supervisor. It comes up where it's just a microsecond. Should I say something? And at that moment, it's almost imperceptible. But you're balancing, is it safe for me to say something? Right?
Right.
And I guess if you say yes, then you're psychologically safe. Then you're in that climate of psychological safety.
Perhaps.
Before I get into the conversation with Bill, I just want to talk about silence. Silence is safe. What do I mean by that? No one will ever know what you don't know. You'll never get a glance from someone that is sort of saying to yourself that you're sort of minimalizing you, I guess, right? There's no risk of being seen as being ignorant or incompetent or disruptive, right? It's safe. But we have to get to a point organizationally, and I would say also societally, where we make certain that every voice is heard. Because without it, there's no chance for innovation. There's no chance of reducing error. And I'll frame error in the construction industry as injury, illness, death.
Right.
Right? So the stakes are that high.
Yeah, it's like silence can satisfy you as an individual, but what is it doing for the organization? Because if you're holding something that's really important that could change the outcome of a project, it may feel safe to you just to keep your mouth shut, but organizationally, it's probably better to speak up. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, Bill, if you just wouldn't mind, just taking a little bit of time to sort of frame how you got introduced to psychological safety, and then how did it become really important enough for you to advance it, organizationally?
Yeah, it was probably about 2 summers ago, maybe 3 summers ago, that I first heard of the phrase psychological safety, and prior to that I had never heard of it. And I was reading a book, and the book mentioned the phrase. It also mentioned that there was this woman from Harvard Business School, Amy Edmondson. So I was kind of intrigued, and at the same time I was reading one of Amy's books, and I was also thinking about one of our own internal departments that was a high-performing team. And I was thinking, geez, I wonder if psychological safety has anything to do with this high-performing team. So I took a chance. I reached out to Amy, and I had no idea that she'd actually even get back to me, but she did. And she introduced me to one of her colleagues who happened to be a consultant based out of Tennessee, Nashville. And we engaged her to assess the level of psychological safety within this department. And the numbers were through the roof, and in a good way. And the consultant taught us about what psychological safety was, and a lot of it had to do with the leader of the group and the way that that leader behaved. The leader was humble, not afraid to share his own mistakes, and created an environment of psychological safety, which thus increased the performance of that team dramatically. And that team really stands out within our organization, and it still does. And so that's how I was introduced to it. And then, that was the beginning of the journey. And then at the same time, we were all reacting to the murder of George Floyd back in May of 2020. And we were trying to do something purposeful with DEI within our organization. So we assembled a small group of people that we called our DEI working group. We hired a consultant to help us develop a strategic plan focused on improving DEI within our organization. And over the course of a year, we identified 3 goals. And these goals came about after we learned about where we were as an organization relative to DEI. We did a survey. We had one-on-one interviews with people. We had focus group sessions, and we gathered a boatload of information. And from that, we were able to develop 3 goals. And the first goal of our DEI strategic plan is to create and foster a psychologically safe and accountable workplace, with the number 1 goal of creating more inclusion and that feeling of belonging.
Yes, so important.
Yeah, but as I learned more about psychological safety, and I learned about Google's Project Aristotle and how they spent 3 years spending millions of dollars trying to figure out what created high-performing teams within their organization. They thought it had something to do with people's academic backgrounds, their personalities, who they had lunch with, but none of that mattered. And then, at about 3 years into this journey at Google, they also learned about Amy Edmondson and about this whole concept of psychological safety. And once they learned about that, it kind of all came together. And that was like the number 1 criteria, I guess you'd call it, of high-performing teams at Google was psychological safety.
Was there a climate that existed that promoted or where psychological safety became this emergent outcome?
Yeah. So this is a huge learning experience for me personally, and also for us organizationally. So then we knew we were onto something, and so we wanted to take what we had learned with psychological safety into our organization. So we found another consultant that was actually part of Amy Edmondson's Fearless Leader organization. And last summer we had a number of introductory trainings and workshops teaching every one of our employees, what psychological safety is, what it isn't, teaching our leaders the behaviors that can create an environment of psychological safety, because within a team or a work group, the leader has the most influence on creating psychological safety.
Bill, if I can just interrupt for a moment. The training that you described, leaders, and I'll frame it sort of followers. I know that's not really the right way to frame it, but with the leaders and their team present at the same time, did you conduct the training as functioning teams, or was this more holistic, where you was it department-based training? so that the departments could ask questions specific to things going on within their department, or is this you just kind of every fourth person attended the training on this day, if you will?
That's a really good question. So it was just holistic. It was getting the whole group together. We've got 215 employees, and I think we had broken it up into 4 training sessions, and it was all virtual, but it was just basic introductory to psychological safety. Because what that then led to is us taking a survey, all the employees, to assess the level of psychological safety within the organization as a whole. And that was conducted by our consultant, Hollinix. And right now we're in the middle of learning more about the results of that scan. And they've actually got heat maps that they were able to create, which we can now tell where we've got higher levels of psychological safety and not so high levels of psychological safety within the organization. So that sets us up for being able to take it to the next level in being able to look at teams, project teams, or departmental work groups, and look at them individually. And one of the things I really enjoyed about our consultant is that they told us that they did not want to be a consultant for life. So they're actually training us on how to administer Amy's 7-question survey on how to determine the level of psychological safety within a project team or a departmental work group, and be able to analyze the results, be able to take those results back to the team and report the findings, and then also be able to collaborate with that team on how to make changes in behavior within that team, particularly with the team leader, who has the most influence on the psychological safety within that team, and make some subtle changes. And then let the team try this, and then let our certified person come back after a period of time, and then reassess and see where we are. So it's a process that we're in. We haven't perfected this, but it's part of a journey that we're on. But I think we're onto something really, really important.
So important. The sense of belonging, the ability to learn. I'm really curious about the heat map. We were talking just before the podcast about the construction industries, and I think in some regard very unique the industry in that we're constantly teaming, and whether we're teaming to form a pursuit team, whether we're teaming to do an innovation at a company level, whether we're teaming at a project level, a short-term project, long-term project, and within that project we're teaming with the AHJ, with design team, with the owners, with the end users. So there's this constant evolution. So the heat map, I'm really interested to learn more about the heat map. Not necessarily the details of it, but I'm interested to know at this point whether the higher performing teams are more static in terms of like a department, if you will, right? That don't really see the ebb and flow of members as greatly as a project team may see. Are you seeing the project at a project team level or a department level with the being more higher performing?
I think it varies.
Yeah.
And my sense is, and I'm not an expert yet, that a lot of it is influenced by the leader of that team, the leader of the department. And when I talk about the leader of a project team, I'm thinking, most of us are familiar with a project executive. That's probably the person who has most influence on the level of psychological, safety within that team. And I think we need to pause and talk about what that looks like and feels like. I mean, we've all been in meetings where you're trying to express an idea, and there's somebody that jumps in and cuts you off, and you're not able to finish what you wanted to say, right?
100%.
And in that particular case, right, you probably, in my case, I get cut off, and I'm thinking, wow, I guess they didn't want to listen to what I had to share. But I think I had something really important. But, you kind of just settle back and, you let whoever cut in finish what they wanted to say. And that's a perfect example of a team or an environment that you don't have a sufficient level of psychological safety. So I think that's part of it. And I also think it's...
And in that instance, Bill, they're not only shutting you down, but they've just informed the rest of the team not to speak up.
Not to speak up.
Right.
And what they have to say is more important than everybody else.
Yes.
Yeah. And, so you look around and the members of a project team, everybody brings a different skill set, a different experience. And, the more diverse the team members are, relative to experience and skill sets, I think that you can tap into higher levels of team performance, be more innovative, be able to solve problems easier. But I think, the team leader needs to be able to sit back and listen. Somebody speaks up and starts to describe something, well, ask more. Draw more out of that person.
Yes.
Or a perfect example is, we're either probably on the extrovert side or introvert side. There's always an introvert that's part of a project team. That's probably the person who probably has the best idea. So look around and try to figure out who hasn't participated in this conversation yet and reach over and say, Carly, tell me what you're thinking. And let Carly speak up. Because Carly probably has something to say that is probably going to add to the conversation. It's probably going to allow that team to better solve that problem and be more innovative. So that's kind of the crux of what psychological safety is.
It's really fascinating. I think there's so much opportunity organizationally and even within the industry to improve or to really create the climate necessary for psychological safety. As on your resume, you talk about lean practices. I've taken the AGC lean course, and for me, I was left with these two underlying pillars, really, of continuous improvement and respect the people. And then I go back to look at the 8 wastes, that non-utilized talent as being one of the 8 wastes. So if we look at lean practices and pull planning, for example, where you're really now taking the schedule out of the hands of the field superintendent and really putting it in the hands of the whole entire team, you have to end up with a more informed, more realistic approach to building.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect example. I did my first pull plan probably 10 years ago, and I was scared to death.
For sure, absolutely, yes.
And half the foremen in the pull plan had wanted nothing to do with this, and so it was my job to create an environment, and I had no idea the environment that I was creating had anything to do with psychological safety, but that's exactly what it was. It was creating an environment where people felt comfortable speaking up and sharing their opinion, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what a pull plan is all about. You need to be able to pull and draw that information from that foreman, about their scope of work, about how they think they're going to be able to perform that work, the size of the crew or crews and the duration, and what they need to have complete by the person before them for them to be able to do this. So for an effective pull plan, you got to have psychological safety, and we got to train our field staff or those people that are running the pull plans about psychological safety, because once they understand this and how important it is, I think the outcomes from the pull plans are going to go through the roof, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to get everybody participating.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and everybody sharing what's important to them, what works, what doesn't work, and you're going to get the foreman bringing in new ideas, okay, maybe even sharing ideas with other trades, that other people hadn't thought about.
And it's messy. Yeah. Like it's not always as fluid, like good looking. There's negotiation, right? There's might be even a little conflict in trying to get your idea across. But at the end of the day, you're getting all of the information out on a table, out on a board, right? For people to make better decisions from.
Yeah, and maybe even a little bit of humor in these things too. Because, you know, we've all faced a foreman that's kind of sandbagging the amount of time that they need. And I love it when another foreman picks up on that and says, bullshit.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Absolutely. So I really appreciate hearing about the journey you're taking at Columbia Construction. It's really informative. It's obvious you're derived value from it, because you're continuing with the initiative. I think there's a ton of opportunity. For me, I also see like this opportunity, and I'm really hopeful to learn from you. It's apparent that the leader becomes central in this journey. And I can speak a little bit personally. Since COVID, we have a team at Dimeo, a safety team, and since COVID, we've held a daily huddle with our team, the lead. And during COVID, with the pace of learning and the uncertainty and the interactions we were having in the field, the nature of the episodes that were occurring, we just had to learn in real time at the same time. So we felt, for that reason, we held this daily huddle. And we've maintained that. The team that I have has wanted to maintain it. We still meet every day. And on Fridays, we have this we call Reflection Fridays. And as the leader, I participate in that, and I look back over the course of the week, reflect on the interactions I've had, maybe that's interactions that didn't go so well, and I'll recall those. So maybe a decision I made that was wrong, could have involved more people to make a more informed decision. So it's been a really healthy journey for myself, and I think as a result of that, it's allowed my team to participate at a different level. I'd be interested to understand whether our team exhibits, from a heat map perspective, whether we would be a high-performing team. I like to think we are, but I think it's the leadership level, whether it's at the executive level, whether it's at the job site field super level, but we get down to the crews out in the field. You know, with the AGC of Mass, we have this CARE construction safety program, and one of the underlying ideas that we have is that if we provide the crew leaders with skills, there's an opportunity to really understand, better mitigate those factors that are affecting the critical decision making of the workers at the sharp end of the stick out in the field.
Yeah.
Right? So is it based on the information that you've learned to this point, are there strategies, are there trainable skills that we can provide to the crew leaders on our projects here in Boston, for example, that would allow them to understand that somebody on their crew may have information that they don't have. They may know something that they don't know that would better inform their plan, right? So how do we share this information? How do we train these individuals that hey, being vulnerable is okay. Asking a question of a subordinate to get information is good, right?
Well, that's exactly what it is. You know, it's understanding the behaviors that support psychological safety. You know, it's about listening. It's about asking questions, right? You know, it's about the leader not being the know-it-all, you know, being vulnerable. You know, I don't know everything, but the team around me, you know, everybody has something that they know that I don't know, and being able to gather that, you know, because that's going to make the whole team even more of a high-performing team. And that's the challenge is that, you know, we're at a level right now where we're looking at project teams within Columbia, but part of our journey is to tap into the team that the field staff creates with the foreman.
Yes.
That's a whole other level. And then there's a whole other level after that the foreman with all the tradespeople that are working for the foreman. So we can keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. And, so this doesn't happen overnight. This is a long journey, and I think we're at the very beginning of it. But I think that we're going to keep working at this until we get to that, until we get to bringing the foreman of the trade partners into this conversation so they understand, because not all of our field staff are perfect. So you think about it, if you're in a project team and the team leader, you're sensing that they're not creating an environment of psychological safety. So what can members of the team do, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so just jump right in, just jump right in and kind of take the lead and, notice that Carly isn't saying something and jump in. Hey, Carly, you haven't said something. You don't have to be the leader of that team to ask Carly. You could be a member of the team to reach out to Carly and ask her what her opinion is and what she's thinking, and then think about what's going on here, because the team leader is going to see this dynamic and is going to say, wow, I should be doing this. Yeah, so it's a learning moment for the team leader.
Yes.
To do the same thing.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. I think there's a ton of opportunity in developing a process, whether it's through lean pull planning practices or other lean practices. There's also human organizational performance, or HOP, through development of learning teams. The emergent output of that is psychological safety. And then, of course, just learning about from Amy Edmondson's team and colleagues about practices that a leader can embrace, whether it's through showing vulnerability or asking questions, to create that climate necessary for psychological safety. Really, there's a great opportunity for the industry at many levels.
So Bob, you need to ask me if I've seen any improvements yet from what we're doing.
Yeah, we did discuss this before, and I appreciate you reminding me of this. So we had so there's some research, I'm not going to go into it, that Amy undertook in 1999, and that really formed the basis for psychological safety and her work from that point forward. And Bill was sharing with me some of what he's seeing and what they're seeing at Columbia Construction. So Bill, why don't you just share that observation that you share with me?
Yeah, and before I do, I might share a little bit about what Amy learned herself. I mean, as a research assistant at Harvard, she was doing some work at hospitals trying to figure out patient care and if the quality of care had anything to do with the reported number of mistakes that were being made at hospitals. And she just assumed that the lower performing hospitals would be reporting the most amount of mistakes. So she gathered all this information, and the data told her that there was something totally different going on here. And what she learned, to make a long story short, was that the higher performing hospitals were reporting the higher number of mistakes being made. The lower performing hospitals had a lower amount of mistakes being reported.
It was extraordinary.
Yeah, so it tied right into psychological safety, because in the high performing hospitals, there was a higher level of psychological safety, which allowed the docs, the nurses, the physicians to share their mistakes so that others could learn from them, so that others wouldn't be making the same mistakes. Yeah, it was just amazing. So something just happened at our company just a month ago, which was a really good feeling for me. I'm part of our safety mindset group, and we meet every 2 weeks, and we use HammerTech, one of the programs that we kind of gather data from our job sites. And one of the things that we've been doing over the last year is encouraging our project teams, both project managers and field staff, to record observations, things that they see at our job sites, either good things that are going on or things that aren't so good that could help us prevent injuries and claims. So I was listening to our safety team talking about how the number of incidents are going up. And the conversation was going in a way that our safety team was thinking, oh my God, the number of incidents are going up. This is bad. This is really bad. And then we started talking about the number of claims. And the number of claims started to go down. And then I kind of connected the dots, and I said, holy cow, this is exactly what was going on with Amy's hospitals. So we've actually improved the level of psychological safety, I think, which is enabling our own people to feel more comfortable about reporting incidents and documenting incidents. And because of that, okay, the other side of the equation is that the number of claims are actually going down. So it's actually working. This is the first time that we've actually seen some results from the work that we've been doing over the last year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let me just back up. You say incidents, number of incidents. Is it the number of observations?
Observations, yes.
Just want to make sure we're clear on that. Yeah. So the number of observations are increasing, and you're seeing a reduction in claims.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Because our staff is feeling more comfortable documenting the observations, and there's more observations coming in. And initially, our people thought that was a bad thing, but it's actually a good thing.
So it's like now it's a snowball effect, right?
Yes.
Let's go find more and drive that claim rate down even further.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's awesome.
That's very cool.
That's great. Well, I really appreciate the time we spent talking about psychological safety and everything you're doing at Columbia Construction. Look forward to catching up with you, and I think for myself, really trying to understand how we can implement some skill development at the field level to support a higher level of engagement at the crew level with the crew leaders, and then with the crew leaders and the field superintendent. I think there's a real opportunity there, and I'm going to take your energy and enthusiasm back and talk more about that at Dimeo Construction as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you for pulling me into this conversation. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and I think we're onto something here. I think this is kind of like the magic sauce, particularly in our industry. I mean, if we all grab a hold of this concept and start to improve the level of psychological safety within our project teams, our departments, and then take it to the job sites with our foremen, I think we're going to start to see incredible improvements in the performance of our industry. It's coming. Yeah, and we're at the very beginning of this. So
I have a question. Yeah. So I'm going to end with this thought that I've had, that I use as an analogy or maybe metaphor. But if you take a quarterback on the offensive side of the scrimmage line, and that quarterback has a finite set of resources on the field, and then up in the observing boxes, and then at the field level on the sidelines. That quarterback needs information from every player that is on that offensive team with them in order to make the most informed decision, right? So they're getting calls in from the sideline, they're getting information from the sky boxes, but without accepting the fact that the wide receiver may have some idea that the injury reported by the safety is a little worse than was reported by the coach before the game, and that I have a step on them.
Yeah.
It really makes that team an even higher performing team, right?
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's a fair analogy or not, but
I think it's a great analogy, and I think we can create analogies in a lot of different places. How we can create higher performing teams, and I don't want to forget the fact that the number one reason why we went down this road was to create more inclusion and the feeling of belonging, which I think is so important. And I think that with what we learned with Google's Project Aristotle, that this is a huge side benefit to what we're doing, that the performance of our teams are going to improve as a result of the work that we're doing.
I'm so glad you brought that back into the conversation, because it's so important to all of our organizations, and personally it's important, and as an industry it's critical. Appreciate that.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.